Do not look at spelling. Do not look at grammar. It doesn't matter. You can even turn off the little red line because the little red line really bothered me. And so I remember being like, this is so annoying. I understand it's spelled wrong, but I don't want to fix it right now because I'm in the middle of a thought and I'm going and I'm processing.
Welcome everyone, and today we are back. Alex and I are going to be talking about writing and how to become a better writer. There are a couple of things that you can do, and it's still an important skill that we really need to master. So Alex wanted to share some of the things that she does, and it has taken her maybe several years in order to really master it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Alex, who is going to share some of the techniques that she uses in order to be a better writer.
Well, thank you for having me back. I'm so happy. Hello, listeners. I think when my mom and I we were thinking about, what idea can we bring this time, what it would be beneficial, writing, when she said that it took me several years, was very gentle. I mean, I remember struggling. It was just the epitome of my demise in middle school and in high school. And I just remember, this is, I would procrastinate and procrastinate because I hated writing essays. And when all of my friends would be able to sit down and write it, I would be like, how? It takes me hours upon hours just to get, typing and writing something. And lo and behold, it's because a little thing called dyslexia. So I would say throughout the years, even without having the diagnosis, I definitely formulated the best way because I am lazy and I want to be as efficient as possible with my time while doing the best work possible. I really hate looking at something twice, even though for the listener, when writing an essay, you will have to look at it twice. I'm just being the nice way. Mom, you
Or
can
3 times or 4 times. Really, writing an essay is not a one and done, and that's
No,
really important.
it's not. And if you want, we can talk about college essay season where it was okay, version 1, version 2. And I swear we were at each other's throats because I'm like, I'm done with this stuff. I don't want to do it. And you were just like, no, you need to sit down, look at it again. But going back to the points of, I really, I even wrote it down because I was like, I really think that this is such an important topic. And for me, it took years, but if I can help an individual figure out what's the best way to write an essay, and it's different for everyone, then I feel like it can save them so much time. And then they can be more strategic about their time. So without further ado, these are
Absolutely.
my 5 tips.
All right, hold on, because we're just kind of going back and forth. So I think that one of the reasons that we did this podcast was to share our learning. And I think that you have learned how to write essays and how to write things. And I think that where it's important in when we write, we're not just taking what we say orally and transcribing it, that there really are differences. The written language tends to have a more advanced vocabulary, a more developed vocabulary. Sentences have a specific structure that we use that you don't have to worry about in oral communication. And so I think that all of that learning that you can share, Alex, is vital because it's a skill that really isn't going away. Yes, we have AI, but it's a skill that we still need to use. So now I'll ask you, go ahead and turn it over to you.
No, absolutely. Adding on, I think AI definitely helps you, but if you don't know how to do it yourself, you're going to run into that problem of, is this even right? And I remember going on to one of my favorite kind of essays to write in 7th grade was the Dear Abby essays, because I was able to write it from how I would speak. So it would just flow naturally, and it wasn't like a different language, because sometimes when you're writing that really professional, really scholastic essay, it's almost like a different language in my mind. You really have to pay attention to grammar. When you're speaking, you're like, "Hello, world, listening to me." It's a very different conversation. So, without further ado, um, here are my little tips and tricks. I have 5 of them. And so the first one is that you really, really need to understand the question. You know, when your teacher says you need to do a book report, it's like, okay, but what is a book report? What do I need to write about? Do I need to write about the plot? Do I need to write about character development? And these are the really important things. And, don't read it once and then just start and jump in, but really read it and possibly even like rewrite it in your own words to really make sure you understand it. Because I found a lot of the times, and then especially as you go, throughout high school and it gets more advanced, so it's not just like a little book report when you were in middle school, but it's like a, a question that is basically a paragraph long for a test, and you have to read the paragraph and then come up with it. It can sometimes be very, very intimidating. Am I understanding this? Am I going to be checking off everything in my essay? And so that would be my first tip and trick. Reread. If you don't understand it, ask a question, have someone read it to you if you can. I understand that sometimes in exams, you're not able to do it, but definitely take a moment and truly understand the prompt. Um,
And for
Again.
that, make sure it
Mhm,
makes sense, right? Because if we're
mhm,
reading it quickly, it's possible that you missed a word, like the word not, N-O-T, is going to make a big difference in what you're writing about. So really pay attention, underline the question, circle what's being asked, and make sure you understand it.
mhm. Absolutely. And something that I also do, and maybe we'll go into this a little bit more, is use a highlighter. Highlighters are amazing. Bring in a highlighter. I mean, if this is going to be a pen and paper kind of situation, highlight. Highlight the question, highlight the different things. So that's the first one. The second one, and this is my absolute favorite because you can go crazy with this one, is outline, outline, outline. And what I mean by outline, and this is what works for me, are mind maps. And that
Okay.
basically means that I'm taking a blank sheet of paper, and you can make them as crazy, as funky, as neat and nice as you want. And in the center of the paper, you write down, the concept of the essay. Like, um, it's going to be like working on it and thinking, okay, character A and her journey throughout the book. And that's like the beginning. Okay. And you're like, what is her journey? And then all of a sudden an idea comes into your mind and you just jot that idea down and you draw a line in a circle. And you just keep doing that with all the possible ideas that you have, all the possible thoughts. And you can have a thought of a thought. So you can be like, oh, yeah, little Jenny, blah, blah, blah. Um, she showed that she became much happier throughout the book. And then you can be like, oh, I remember that the first time she became happier is when she got her puppy. And you can be like, then from happy, puppy, and stuff like that. So you just like keep going on a thought and you just do that and you just jot down as much as you can. And you if you need to step away and come back and take another look at it and come up with more ideas, then take a step away and then come back, because like that you'll definitely think of everything. And my mind maps are so illegible. They are so crazy that it does not matter. No one needs to be able to understand this information other than you.
Okay.
Um,
And so a
mhm.
mind map is kind of a piece of paper. So it's like a graphic organizer that basically has lots of circles and lines connecting things. And we'll see if we can actually show one, because I think it'll be helpful for people just to make sure they visually see one, understand it.
Yeah, might be better than me being like circle, line, circle, circle. No, and so I think, and they can really be crazy, and you can draw an X and you can color, and that's my favorite, bringing highlighters after I finish it and then being like, oh, this thought, great for paragraph one. Circle, highlight in paragraph one, highlight, highlight. And then I say, okay, yellow means paragraph one, blue means paragraph two. If it gets like to a really, really messy and you need to like reorganize the mind map. But outline, outline, outline. It will save you so much time because at the end of the day, when you are looking at that computer screen and you're just staring and you don't know where to start, at least with the outline, you know where to start and it doesn't become ambiguous. And I think you can talk about this, Mom, where you would see me in front of a computer screen and it'd be like, "What have you done?" And I'd be like, "I've done the heading. I'm saying name, date, class, and teacher."
And I think part of the issue was that it was so daunting and so overwhelming that you're frozen like a deer in headlights. And so by using a mind map, then in fact, what it allows you to do is you're just doing little pieces. So they're little pieces that just as you think of them, you go through and so forth, and it doesn't feel daunting.
Yeah,
How do you,
absolutely.
my favorite, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
And I think it's a perfect sentence because eventually as you get older, and I remember my first like thesis when I was told that I need to do 4,000 words, I was like, whoa, whoa. And then eventually to like my final thesis where we didn't have a word minimum, but it had to be over 100 pages. And I didn't feel as daunting. And I ended up with 160 pages. And it was like a book.
Right. And hopefully there was an executive summary in the beginning because
Oh, for sure, for sure. And of course, you have all the abstracts at the end, but um so that's so far outline, outline, outline. And then once you finish outline, then move to a computer. But before that, don't go onto a computer. You're just going to be deer in headlights. And I love that expression because it really did show me throughout the majority of my education when I didn't have my steps in progress. Um, then move and then write down, and it can even be in bullet points, it can be in spaces, but then just write down what you thought in your mind map when you connected everything a little bit better and you clean it up a little bit and you jot that down. And bullet points work great. It doesn't matter at all. And then from there, I think it's amazing because you sort of have your outline of your essay then, and it's more formal. And so then you just go and you start filling it in. And that's where, you start saying, "Oh, right. So I wrote puppy. Let me go and find the example on that page, that book that said puppy." And then you can say, "Oh, right here, let's add this quote on blah, 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 blah." And I think that just really helps your flow. And I also think that something important is that this does not have to be in order. My infamous move was to understand the prompt, write an intro, but that last sentence on your intro, which defines your whole basically paper, your book report, I never wrote it until I had most of my paragraphs done so that I could say, "Oh, okay, my paragraph's just reporting this idea." Sometimes. Now, I don't know, your English teacher might get really upset at you for doing this, but that's what worked for me, that I would jump around in order to really figure out that flow, in order to really figure out how it best fit and then to merge everything together. And then from there, I would say, "Okay, I have my thoughts, I have everything. Now let's go back to spelling. Let's go back to grammar. Let's go back to fixing the flow between sentences and everything like that in order to make sure that everything was aligned."
so, for example, then you're taking the bullet points that you have and expanding upon each of the sentences. Because, for example, my favorite, and I teach this to all of my kids, is a bare bone sentence. A sentence just needs to have a subject and a verb or a predicate, right? So, noun, first place, thing, or idea, and then some type of action. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
dog barks is technically a complete sentence. But then you go back and what type of dog? Oh, a brown dog,
Right.
a
Mm-hmm.
young brown dog, an active young brown dog. Right. And then what did they do? They barked. Okay. When did they bark? In the morning. Why did they bark? They barked in the morning when they saw the child on a scooter. And so by doing that and expanding the sentences from there, you are able to capture your idea and then develop each sentence at a time.
Yeah, and I think that helps so much because especially when you're trying to jot down all of your thoughts, and I understand, like, I remember staring, I still do stare at my screen, being like, hmm, what do I want to say? What do I want to write? How can I support this idea? But using those short sentences and then writing everything down, getting the whole, and honestly, that means that your essay is probably going to be half of what it's going to be at the end when you go back and you expand on those sentences. So that's something that's really, really important. The short sentences, they worked so well for me. And I hope they work well for you. Um, yeah. And so those are my tips and tricks, my 5 rules. And I think another important thing really is just do not look at spelling, do not look at grammar. It doesn't matter. You can even turn off the little red line because the little red line really bothered me. And so I remember being like, this is so annoying. I understand it's spelled wrong, but I don't want to fix it right now because I'm in the middle of a thought and I'm going and I'm processing.
Okay, so what you're saying is then, even when you're doing some of the spell check and everything else, in your initial draft, turn it off just so
Mm,
that you can capture just the key ideas, then go back to it. So, really, you're doing it in multiple steps. Can you talk a little bit more of, let's say, if you're writing, I don't know, um, a 3-page paper? Then how many steps would it take you? Because I think that for the listeners, it can be helpful to really understand what we're looking at. Because I think in our minds, often we just jumble everything together. Oh, 3 steps. No.
no, not at all. And I think something really interesting is that for me, sometimes it would make sense for me to do all of the steps and then realize I didn't properly develop a paragraph here in my 3 page paper. So it's only 2.5, and I need to develop it more. Go back and say, like, okay, idea. Let's go back to my map. What's an idea? Where can I pull from? Okay, let's write it out a little bit. Then saying, okay, let's put it back on the computer. And then, okay, let's short sentences. Short sentences doesn't have to make sense, just needs to make sense for me. And then, okay, let me make these sentences longer. And still, when I'm making those sentences longer, I do not care about spelling. I do not care about grammar. It is the thought process of remembering the details, of bringing out the storytelling, the narrative to life before I say, yes, I did not know how to spell rambunctious, But who cares? Until you actually press submit, you have time. And then after, your thought process goes down, you've made the sentences longer, you like the flow, you like the narration of your essay. Then after that, at the end, I go through and I said, okay, let's turn spelling back on. And I go through each sentence on, one of, I would say, the second to last or maybe the third to last read, going through and be like, let's do some spell check right now. Let's make sure my grammar is proper. And I loved Grammarly. Grammarly saved me. I don't know if it's still the big thing to use, but in high school in 2018, 2019, it saved me.
Right. Absolutely. And I think one of the things also that is the technology that I use with my students sometimes is when you're getting close to um, close to finalizing the essay or what you're writing, it can be helpful to take and use text to speech. So you go in and you have the computer say it out loud, read it to you as you're following along, because at that point you'll understand or you'll hear if a word is missing. Whereas if you're just reading it, you may not pick up on that mistake. So that is something that now I think it's a Chrome extension. Most software programs or most word processing programs have it, whereby the text to speech feature will read it to you. And that's something, because with my students, I'm not always going to be there to read it to them. And maybe their parents are not going to be there to read it back to them. So this is a tool that really promotes independence.
No, absolutely. And I think I wish that I had that technology because I think it would have made such a difference. And now that is something that I do use.
Mm.
So I'm able to say, okay, that is how it's supposed to be. Oh, I'm missing the is in the sentence, so it's not really making sense. And it's sometimes it's those small things where you write through instead of thought or something like that. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, hold up. This sentence doesn't make sense. What was I trying to say? What was I trying to say? And then, okay, that is it. I'm missing the T or something like that.
Right. Now, one of the things also, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, because you're like, well, don't use the technology, don't use the computer, until you get to a certain point. Now, some dyslexics, and particularly some individuals that also have dysgraphia, so whereby writing then is kind of there are unexpected issues with writing, right? The physical form of writing. Then what we recommend is to use speech to text in order to capture it in a word processing system. So, for example, with one student, then when they were working on, they're in middle school, a 5-paragraph essay. What we did was we did the mind map, and then we created the that first outline using speech to text. So he was able to follow through and say, okay, introduction, we're going to talk about this. Paragraph one, next paragraph, then the key point is XYZ. And so forth, just to create a bare bones structure that they could then work with typing. So I think that I just want to provide the flexibility for individuals with dysgraphia that they use the technology, but at the same time, it's the steps that become very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say don't go onto your computer, it's wholesomely from personal experience where when I was on the computer and I opened up the Word document and it was that document where I already put in that title, I would be the deer in the headlights. I wouldn't know where to start, even if I would be okay, this and then that and then that and then that, because for me that's just not how my mind works. And I think that's something also so interesting with dyslexics is that there is such a large spectrum, so what works for me doesn't necessarily have to work for everyone else. And so I think that's, something really really interesting. But if it does work for you, I hope, you get to save some time.
Right. Take all the years, a
Yeah.
decade worth of information
Of pain,
and
of
of, of,
torture.
of pain and torture
Yeah.
that Alex has provided of going from a 5-paragraph essay in,
Yeah.
let's say, in middle school, where you had to do one a week,
Yeah.
to then being able to write a 150-page thesis, for your master's program. So
Mhm.
this didn't happen overnight. It took years in the making. And
Not at all. And I will be honest with you. I used AI and other things to help me grammar and spell check, because when you're working, you with especially with that level, you just sometimes need to understand how to do it. And then once you know how to do it, there's nothing wrong with using the technology. It's just understanding how to do it so that when you are reading, when you are checking, you're making sure it makes sense. It's not just, how you speak, but again, it's a different language. It's how you write. And so that's my biggest tip is once you understand how to do it, use more technologies as well.
right. So it can help you kind of speed it up. But I think that what's important, and if this is what I'm hearing correctly from
Mhm.
you, is that you have to be able to walk before you can use the technology. Because if you've never really developed the skill of writing, then it becomes, you're not able to evaluate what is presented to know
Oh,
whether.
100%. It's the same thing. If you've never studied engineering, you can't read the blueprint that it's printed out. It comes to the same fundamentals, the same understanding. And I think
Right.
it's really, really interesting.
Right. And I love the analogy of I can walk to Albany, but I prefer to take a car.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's a great one. That's a great one.
For that. So let's see. So we talked about writing, how it really is an important skill. And it has a different structure than oral communication. That is the reality. If you pick up a book or you listen to something, it's not even that it's more formal. It's that the sentence structure, the paragraph structure, the overall structure of the written word is much more complex than oral communication. So we need to understand that and then write appropriately. The use some of your knowledge of a decade in the making of the 5 steps that how to capture the information and craft it in such a way that it's not overwhelming and that it allows you to proceed step by step. So breaking it down into manageable pieces is critical, and having one focus at a time. So one is capturing all the information, providing the basic structure. One might be going through and expanding upon the sentences. Number 3 could be then going through and editing it for grammar or for spelling and so forth. And really, that's the best way to write and to do it effectively.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think I had just a few little tips. And my last thing that I wanted to say is
Okay.
that use a dyslexic friendly font.
Okay.
That
So
helps so much. I use Verdana. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. Verdana.
Verdana.
It for me it works. It's my font. I use it all the time, and it could even be when you're in class and they say, "Oh no, we only use Times Roman." I hate that font. I cannot write with that font. So I change the font, I write my essay, and then I change it back. And that helps me so much. And then the other one is take breaks. This is
Mm,
such a hard task for your mind that you will become very tired very quickly. And so what I like to use is the Pomodoro situation or factor task or whatever it's called, challenge maybe, and it's you put on a timer on your phone for 30 minutes. And in those 30 minutes, you really concentrate. No taking your phone, no doom scrolling, no nothing. It's I'm there with the pen and the paper. I'm typing, I'm doing something towards finishing this essay. And then once the timer goes off, I save, I shut down my computer for a second, I close it, I go on my phone, I doom scroll, I relax my brain for 5 minutes. And then once the 5 minutes is up, I go back and I do another 30 minutes. And it's also like this little self gratification almost, but it gives me time to kind of like reset to make sure that I'm not too tired to because at the end of the day, a 3-page essay, when you really need to like sit down and get it done and because I've been there in high school where I said, or even in middle school where I said, I can do my essay Thursday night. Yes, I can. Alex, can you actually? That was the real thing. But taking those breaks just make sure that you're still alive, still being able to read, still being able to type. And so that's my 2 tips.
all right, wonderful. The Pomodoro effect. I like that, right? For that. So do you have to set a timer for the 5 minutes? So the five
Yes,
minutes.
yes. If not, the 5 minutes become the 30 minutes and then it doesn't work out.
Exactly, exactly. So, but you know what you mentioned at the beginning about your when you were writing your college essays. Maybe we'll make that a separate episode
Yeah.
for all the students out there that are crafting their college essays. So they were just in because most of the deadlines were either December 31st. So maybe we'll wait a little bit for that one. But we definitely have experience of getting through that.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Alrighty. Well, I am going to thank you, Alex, and I'm going to thank all of the listeners for following along. And we really hope that these 5 tips on how to become a better writer resonate with you. And if you think or know of another parent or student that could benefit from this, please share it and consider writing review. So with that, I am going to say adieu, or should I say, if it's a pomodoro, I should say ciao. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.